A girl is called the disgrace of the family and is used as a sacrifice for her brother. She gave up everything, so she decided to run away from the family, allying herself with the villain and helping him destroy everyone. She rescues the patriarch of the rival family and his son when suddenly the biggest villains start to treat her differently, and everyone seems tamed by her. Hi, I'm Mimi, and I'll be accompanying you during your favorite time. The story begins with a man asking Real Rim to raise her head. It's raining heavily while the man says that she is the opposite of her twin brother, Ryan. He admits that they were confused because she couldn't awaken the power of water at age 20, but now they've finally found the answer in the ancient texts. He says that this is a shame since the only way for Ryan's water power to become perfect is with her death. But he asks her not to be sad, explaining that the entire House of Elaim will forever remember her sacrifice. The only member who doesn't is the El-Raim family. King El-Raim, a disgrace and object of contempt. No matter how hard she tried, no one loved her. The man orders the execution to begin. They prepare themselves as she thinks about how she tried to be loved, but it was all in vain. At that moment, the man is shocked, and his brother Ryan realizes that she is awakening the power of water. Everyone is shocked as the man asks what is happening. Suddenly, the spiritual stone breaks. She thinks that if she has another life, she will surely abandon them. Her eyes are still closed. Someone asks her to open them. Suddenly, she finds someone reaching out to her, asking her please. Then she wakes up, gasping for breath, completely surprised. She looks around and wonders where she is. She knows that her room was set on fire the morning of the execution. She can't believe that it was all a dream. She can't help but wonder why she is. Suddenly, her brother appears and asks her how she is feeling. The king asks what he is doing there. Ryan asks what she means by Izo. He says that it is obvious since he came to check on her. But suddenly, he grabs her wrist, saying that it is because of her. His schedule is completely messed up. He looks completely unbalanced. Before saying that this is a nuisance, the king is surprised by his expression. Hey, remember, you've seen this before, 3 years ago when she jumped to protect Ryan from an assassin, ending up poisoned and fainting, which made all of Ryan's plans stop. She realizes that it's exactly like that day. Then she wonders if she really went back in time. She thinks about the nuisance he mentioned. Then she suddenly takes her hand away and asks him not to worry, since he'll never do something so useless again. He's shocked and asks what she means by that, but someone comes in and asks Ryan to leave quickly. Ryan asks what's going on. He replies that his father summoned the water alarms and the spirit stone suddenly started to glow, so he needs to check the spirit stone. Ryan gets up and asks him to explain everything to her. On the way out, the guy gives the king a look. The king is finally alone. She remembers that the moment the execution was carried out, the spirit stone shattered, and she felt some kind of energy being absorbed into her body. The king remembers everything. What happened again? She thinks that maybe she has awakened the power of water. She decides to try it by concentrating all the energy she felt in her hand and manages to form a sphere of water. She happily realizes that it worked and admits that she still doesn't know if this is a blessing or a curse, but she assures that this time she will completely abandon El-Raim's house. She stops in a carriage. Someone asks the young master how his eyes are. The blindfolded young man replies that he still can't see anything. The man begins to talk about the assassination attempt from 2 days ago, explaining that the El-Rain are convinced that Verch is behind it. He then asks if they should try to lift the curse, but the young man replies that he doesn't know either. All he knows is that the only ones who can lift this curse are the Water Awakeners, so he has no other choice. He thinks that they should at least gather some information about El-Rain. The man looks outside and notices that it seems the Imperial family sent another gift. The young man notices that they sent another gift in addition to the curse. As the assassins prepare to attack the carriage, the blindfolded boy mentions that they should return the kindness double. He begins to release an energy and mentions that if anyone is able to break the curse, he will give them whatever they want. The assassins begin to surround the carriage as he states that the enemy must be killed and everything must be completely resolved. He uses his power as the assassins outside begin to feel bad, declaring that this is the creed of Verch. Upon arriving at Alam's house, the head of the family asks the reason for his visit. He then confesses that he has a request to make to Zerim. He mentions that if his visit is not welcome, he can ask him to leave now, but shows that he has an official letter of visit. The letter of visit is a formal protocol indicating that the visiting party will not cause harm to the host family. It is written by the temple and the imperial family, and those who visit with it cannot be rejected without justification. El Rain thinks he is being bullied, while the young man smiles and asks why he has such a strange expression, as if he is afraid of the Versh family's power. The Duke asks him to say what he wants. Duke Divir Michael mentions that his eyes are completely blind and cannot see. The saint managed to cure this curse, so he explains that if there is a water alarm clock that can break his curse, he would like to ask for his help. The Duke comments that it seems quite inconvenient, but if the curse is so severe, the person who undoes it could lose their life. So he points out that it is a heavy burden, and it is better to let them choose on their own instead of forcing them. And he asks Michael to give him a month to wait for a volunteer to appear. Michael is silent, but then responds that it is fine, agreeing to wait for a volunteer for a month. He leaves, then his assistant asks if it is kidney. He says that it would lift the curse, but he responds that no, as he had already expected, since from the beginning he doubted that there was an alarm clock capable of breaking this curse. He gets into the carriage and observes everything through the window. It is already night, and the knight mentions that no matter how much he looks, there are no ants inside, and even the servants are not appearing. He asks the young master if he still intends to stay there, while Michael hears that the Duke of El Rain has gathered the water alarm clocks, and Walter asks if they should go check. Michael thinks. He stares at this for a while before mentioning that it's just a convenient excuse, but thinks it's a good opportunity. He then asks Walter to gather information about the Duke of El Rain. Walter replies that he's in the service of his lord and then leaves, while Michael thinks about the situation, wondering if his sight will ever return. He finds this problematic since although he can still use his abilities without sight, precise control is impossible, and in the worst-case scenario, he might not be able to use his abilities at all. Suddenly, he hears something and wonders if there's an intruder. He stands up and declares that he can't stand unexpected visitors at night, asking who she is. He prepares to use his power, but she tells him that she's not an assassin or a water awakener sent by the Duke of Elim, and suddenly he's surprised to realize that this smell isn't the strong smell of El Raim's water, but rather a refreshing fragrance that he can definitely smell. She reveals herself and takes off her hood as he asks why she came to him. She thinks she can help him with his curse. He asks what she means by help before grabbing his hand and asking what he'll give her if she lifts the curse, and he remains silent for a while before smiling and saying that he will give her everything. Then he kisses her hand, repeating that he will give her everything. She explains that she would first like to see the state of the curse while he sits down. He tells her to do whatever she wants since there is no reason for him not to cooperate with someone who says they can lift the curse. She tells him that she will then remove his blindfold. She tries to remove it but notices that the knot of the blindfold is very tight, and he explains that his knight tied it so that it would not come loose. Michael notices that, in fact, he could have removed the blindfold himself, but now he does not want to say that. Feeling the touch of her soft hand, he is even more sensitive now that he has become blind and continues to smell her water. The queen removes the blindfold and looks into his eyes. She notices the curse inside his eyes. She is surprised, noticing that this is the work of black magic. This is a little different from a common curse since it is surrounded by 7 chains, which makes it more severe over time. He is surprised and asks how someone from El Raim knows this since the Duke has a version of ancient black magic. She simply says that she knows before remembering that at the time she couldn't give up hope of being loved by them, so she read the forbidden books to help others even without having the power of water. So she reveals that if he doesn't act soon, he could really lose his sight. She warns him that first she will release the seal at the top, so she starts working on it using her powers. Ria Noda, that despite being the first time she uses the power of water, he is moving according to her will. Still surprised by her true ability, he notices a very powerful force flowing into his body and wonders if there was such a strong water alarm in El Raim, wondering who the hell she is. She tells him it is done, and he states that his eyes feel a little better. She explains that if she releases all the layers at once, it would be too hard on his body, so she will release the remaining layers 1 layer per day. She turns and says she will be back tomorrow, starting to leave before he says he will be waiting for her. She seems surprised when he asks her name, but just repeats that she will see him tomorrow. He looks at the blindfold and thinks about what happened, realizing he is thirsty. In his past life, half of the Alim family territory was lost in the war for Michael Versh. The Duke of El Reim was cornered and confessed to her that Michael wanted revenge against them because they ignored and mocked his curse in the past. This drove the Duke crazy, and he wanted to use her death to complete the ritual with Ran and awaken the spirit stone, so they could finally fight him. But the real owner of the stone was her, and not Ran. Ran enters her room while she thinks that if the Duke finds out about this, he will never let her go, since according to imperial law, nobles born into an awakened family are forced to continue in the family until they reach adulthood. After becoming an adult, she is free to choose her own residence. So she just needs to hide this secret until she becomes an adult. She asks Ryan what the problem is, and he answers that he just came to check if there are still any side effects of the poison, asking how her physical condition is. She asks why he is so curious about this. He is shocked, knowing that the side effects of the poison should have already disappeared, so he does not understand why she continues to act like this. He says that her condition is important to him. She answers that it really should be already that he cannot use his abilities perfectly without her. He still does not understand, but mentions that she cannot move freely during the day, so he imagines that she must be frustrated by staying in her room, saying that this was all she needed to know for now. When he leaves, he notices that she has also changed, remembering that before she jumped in front of him to stop the killer. But now it is different, and he wonders what kind of change of heart has happened since she always watched his facial expressions and tried to please him. He grits his teeth in frustration. But then Morden calls him, saying that the light of the stone has become stronger than yesterday. They will observe, and Ryan asks since when it has been like this and hears that it has been like this since yesterday. So he tries to touch it and realizes that he cannot feel anything, asking if it is not correct for the spirit stone to react to him. Night falls as the king prepares to go to Michael again. He greets her. Then she takes off her hood and calls him by his name. He questions if it is not too formal to call him by his full name. Then she asks if she should call him Lord Versh, but he denies, explaining that he would prefer her to call him by his first name. She thinks for a while, but agrees and calls him just Michael. He notices that she doesn't even blink at most of his insinuations, then wonders if she is cold or just smart. She asks how his eyes are, and Michael says they are better since, until yesterday, they hurt with the light. She finds this a relief, and warns that they will lift another layer of the curse. She starts to work on it and releases her power while he trains. Then she holds his hand and tells him not to worry and to trust her, ensuring that his eyes are restored, which leaves him quite surprised. He thinks about how fragile and soft her hand is, so small that it fits smoothly in his embrace, and yet she is the one trying to comfort him. He was never anxious in the first place, but finds the situation really amusing, asking who would have thought that someone like him would hear those words. He tells her that it is okay and that he will trust her, thinking about how she is the first person to capture his interest in this way. She starts to use her powers to lift the curse, and soon after finishes telling him that it is over and asking how he is feeling, wondering if it hurts. He admits that it does not, saying that it is all thanks to her care. As she thinks that even going through this again seems like a strong power, what captivates his interest is not just her ability. She admits that she was worried that he might get hurt, so she is glad that he is okay. He thinks about her treating the infamous Versh like she was a vulnerable little one who needed protection, finding this endearing. He really wants to see her with his own eyes and wonders what kind of expression she is wearing now, so he touches her hair, promising that he will return this favor. He asks if when the curse is lifted, he will finally know her name. She seems surprised, explaining how she thought he had already found out since he could have investigated who she is. So he kisses her hair and says that he never did any investigation since he didn't even think about finding out her identity first. That way, he thinks that it would be no use, since for a water manipulator as powerful as her to never have been known to the world means that there is a story about her that should not be known to the world. He assures her that he will not try to meddle in anything unless she chooses to tell him, so he asks her to tell him herself. She finds him really kind, so he decides which will ensure that he knows her name before his eyes are completely healed. A new day begins, and we see her thinking that just like Ryan said, she is free to walk around during the day, so she thinks she should go to the library and look for books on water manipulation. She finds it really fascinating that before he came back, Michael was full of unfavorable rumors, but he turned out to be much more affectionate than she expected, so she wonders if her regression could have affected him too. She thinks it is lucky for her that the likelihood of receiving help has increased, and maybe it won't end the same way. She goes to the library and notices that it has been a long time since she has been there. She used to come often to hide from relatives who despised the unawakened members, so she tries to remember since when she stopped coming here. Her memories come flooding back as her expression changes to sadness, and she appears dejected. She decides to look for books on water awakeners and needs to read therapeutic books for Michael since by removing the layers of the curse one by one, the necessary power of the water will become more complex. Someone notices her, and he calls her by name with an embarrassed expression. He is Ran. It is Raim, and she remembers she is Rhea. They are twins. She has 3 older brothers. The oldest is Ra, the second is Dana, and the third is Ran. She used to play with him since he is the same age as her. He was shy and loved books, but their relationship started to change. She remembers when he asked her to look at some books, saying that it was ancient and forgotten knowledge, thinking it was incredible. He started collecting forbidden books secretly from their father. At first, she read the forbidden books with him without knowing anything. But later, she read them because she wanted to help the family even without the power of water. But this secret did not last long, and they were discovered. The Duke was full of anger when he questioned who brought these books to Elim. Then Juan got scared and said that it was not him. The Duke asked again who it was, and suddenly he pointed to King, saying that it was her. He said in despair that those ancient books belonged to her. She was completely shocked. The Duke knew very well that she was not guilty since there was no way a young girl could have the money and power to obtain a forbidden book. But even knowing this, he still punished her. She would rather be beaten, but the violence inflicted by the Duke using his water abilities left her truly traumatized. After this incident, she no longer maintained a close relationship with him, but when there were no other blood relatives around, he would often try to start awkward conversations. He would always ask how she was or comment on the weather, just like he is doing now. He asks how she has been, but she calls him and asks what right he has to call her by her first name. He looks at her trembling, realizing that before the regression, she was traumatized by the incident with the banned books. She also used to be afraid of the streets because of this incident, but now she feels completely indifferent, noticing how a near-death experience changes a person. Knowing that he heard that she passed out from the poison, he was worried, but she walks past him and asks if that is all. She has no time to deal with him now, but he insists that he has always wanted to apologize for the mistakes he made when he was young and admits that he is worried about her. But she thinks that he is really worried about himself, so he wants to ease this guilt inside him and feel better. She asks if she is wrong and says that he can't stand the idea of becoming a bad person just like that day, when he wanted to continue with the image of a good child in the eyes of the Duke. He is putting the blame on her for that incident. He doesn't know how to respond, so she says there is no need to apologize now because she has no intention of accepting it. He grabs her hands, but she pushes them away, telling him to continue living like a good child and calling him a hypocrite. It is night, and Michael asks about the results of the investigation that lasted several days, discovering that the spirit stone in El Raim has awakened. He questions if that is the only information and is told that it is. Michael asks for evidence, but Walter asks how he can provide evidence guaranteeing that this is what he saw and heard, explaining that he was on the verge of death to find out about this. But deep down, Walter knows that even saying this, there is no way this kind of appeal will work on the young master. He will certainly say to conduct an investigation again, but to his surprise, Michael says there is nothing he can do. Walter is shocked and confused while Michael acknowledges that he worked hard, explaining that he will ask his father about the spirit stone in the letter. Walter thinks he is finally going crazy after losing his sight to the curse, but Michael seems to be in a good mood. When Walter asks if he is really feeling happy, he answers yes since it has been a day, so it is time to go back. Then he realizes that he is talking about the alarm clock that came to lift the curse. He wonders if that is the reason Michael seems to be in a good mood lately. He decides to leave, taking the letters since it is almost midnight, and tells him that he will send the report to the master. Now he waits for a while before getting up and notices that it has been surprisingly quiet the last few days. Some bells appear holding daggers, and he knows that the kidnappers would not engage in such a trick. Obviously, those who cursed him must have sent them. Michael picks up a dagger, saying that a single blade is more than enough. He thinks that using his abilities would make it easier, but that would make him be chased by Elrain. He also knows that if he uses a weapon, the sound will echo throughout the mansion, so he must deal with this as quietly as possible. The assassin attacks, but before he can dodge, Michael wonders what the purpose could be in sending these guys. He knows that Elim's defenses are certainly not weak, but even so, they managed to infiltrate here. So he asks if their intention is to create a feud between Elraim and Versh. Then he hears a voice calling him from behind. Michael says that she came at a bad time and apologizes, asking her to wait outside for a moment as he is in the middle of cleaning. Now he notices that their movements have stopped, so he thinks it could be that she is using her powers. She asks if he is okay, and he says yes, but remembers telling her to wait outside. The assassins are shaking as she tells him that he may be in danger. She notices his face and touches it, saying that it looks like his cheek has been injured and that she will take care of the treatment once the situation is resolved. He becomes embarrassed and realizes that even amid the smell of blood, she only wants to treat and protect him, admitting that her actions always exceed his expectations and confuse him. Turning completely red, he says that thanks to her, things have been resolved to some extent, with the assassins trapped thanks to her power. He claims he will take care of them, so she must stay behind him. The assassins begin to disappear, and she is shocked. She asks him to wait while they turn to dust. He asks if she did it, but she says no since she didn't use any power. She looks at the bones and wonders if it is another curse, but then starts to think not since most curses leave letters or magical symbols as traces, and she doesn't see any of that. So it really does seem like ancient magic. She tells him she doesn't know the exact origin, but for now doesn't feel any kind of magic. He says in that case there will be no harm and is happy that it is not so bad. He sits down and thanks her for the help, saying he will ask his knight to find out what happened. She accepts, but just as a precaution, he must ask them to be careful. She decides to remove the curse now, so he blushes a little before saying okay. She mentions that she will start, then she uses her power and thinks that if the second curse disappears with this, there will only be 5 curses left. Meanwhile, he wishes for time to stop at that moment. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince looks at the bones and states that it is impossible to maintain his form for a long time, so it would be better to dispose of them. He is the Crown Prince Lucas Francium. His assistant asks what to do with the puppets sent to Elim. The prince says that they will not use this method again, so it is okay to leave them alone. He knows that the Duke of Elim will be suspecting one of the outs now. He also knows that it will not be easy to find out who is behind this. His assistant acknowledges that he is right, but it is also not easy to understand Michael's current situation in the Duchy of Elim. The prince thinks that maybe the Duke of Elhain is planning to cooperate with Versh, but he is told not to worry. It is a curse cast using powerful ancient magic, so even the Duke of Alim will not be able to break it easily. He acknowledges that he really put a lot of effort into casting a curse. Even with the Duke's skills, it will not be easy to solve it, except for one person, Ryan. The Crown Prince asks him to send a letter in advance. He says that there will be a visit to Elim. He uses Nina as an excuse. Meanwhile, someone asks, "What is the status of the energy stone?" They are informed that a blue glow has appeared and that the entire stone is destroyed. It's pulsing like a heart now, proof that the awakening is not far away. They mention that it's all thanks to Ran. He was thinking about when he asked where the king was. He wonders if she didn't ask for him, but the maid told him that she didn't mention anything. Suddenly, the Duke calls Ryan and asks what's wrong. He wonders that since he'll soon be an adult, he should find a partner. He shows him the letter from His Highness the Crown Prince, where he says that he'll be visiting soon and it seems like he wants him and Princess Nina to get involved. He replies that it doesn't matter to him, and he knows that Nina isn't a bad opponent. It was obvious that she liked him since they were young, but Rai was easier to care for than Nina. But now she seems more strange and distant than anyone else, and he wonders where it all went wrong. The Duke is pleased and understands that he has no complaints about his engagement to the princess. He thinks about when he'll invite the crown prince. He mentions that they'll have to hold an event to welcome Michael Versh in the near future. So it would be a good idea to invite the royal family that day. He smiles and says that a grand banquet will be held. At night, while the hunting competition will be held during the day, a few days pass, and there are only 2 curses left. They start, and she realizes that it is more complicated than the previous curses, so it will take some time. He tells her that it is fine, asking her to take her time. Michael remembers Walter asking if there are 2 more curses. He replied that it is still kind of blurry, but now he can already see the shapes and distinguish colors. Walter told him that if he can see the silhouettes in front of him, then there is no problem if he meets an enemy in the hunting competition. Although the Duke hates the Duke of Versh, he still organized a hunting competition to welcome him, so they will probably try something. He thinks that they are slowly crossing the line, and it might even end up being fun since he will step on ice someday, and decides to think of it as entertainment. Until then, King continues to remove the seal, and he notices his vision getting clearer as he wonders if the curse has been removed. He notices that the image is getting clearer, and she calls him, asking if he can see her. He is surprised by the vision and tries to look elsewhere as she says that she tried to remove everything perfectly, but she is not sure if it worked. She calls him back, then he confesses that it is much clearer. He can't believe he is so nervous and tries to calm down. He admits that he is happy that she is the first person he saw after the curse was lifted. Then he takes her hand and kisses her, saying that he is very grateful and that he does not forget favors, like when she restored his eyes. The entire Versh family will treat her as a benefactor. He knows that there is still a layer of the curse left, but he believes that she will soon undo it completely. And just as he promised when she first entered this room, he will grant her whatever she wants. Then he asks her what she wishes. She thinks about it, knowing that it is something she must achieve to avoid repeating the regrets of her past life. She knows it may be impossible alone, but with Michael's help, it may be possible. She tells him that her name is King Aelin, the bane of Aelin's family. She tells him that she was born a mixed-blood Awakener, so she is a mixed-blood Aelin. There is only one thing she wishes, and that is to escape from Ain. She asks him to help her, leaving him surprised before smiling and saying that her name is very beautiful. He touches her face and says that it's okay, he will help her get rid of Aelin. They are sitting together as he mentions that, as he knows, he is the heir of Versh, with his father being the Duke of Versh. He looks at her and notices that he seems to be the only one talking, asking if she can talk about herself too. She tells him that her name is King, but he replies that he already knew that, wanting her to talk about what she likes or doesn't like. She gets confused and wonders what she likes, then says that maybe she likes animals. He asks if she likes birds, but she replies that she is not sure. She notices that even though they are questions about herself, she doesn't know anything and wonders what she likes or doesn't like. Suddenly, birds start to appear and he asks if she likes them. A bird lands on her shoulder. She smiles and mentions that yes, she does. He watches her for a while before turning red. He asks when she thinks she will be able to leave Own, explaining that if she wants, he could let her leave immediately, but she says no since she is still a minor, and minors are not allowed to leave their families until they come of age. So if she were to leave now, the Empire would use its laws to justify capturing her, which could even turn the entire Empire against Versh. He is perplexed as she asks him not to make that expression and asks what the problem is. He knows that once the hunting competition is over, he will leave this place. He does not want to leave her in a place like this, but she also seems uncomfortable, so he will have to wait. So he says he will interpret that she decided to leave on the day of her coming-of-age ceremony. She agrees, saying she will wait. Then someone appears and says that apparently nothing has changed. It is Dana, who heads toward the mansion inside. He is informed that he is late as he asks if this is not the young man famous for his beauty, asking him if he has the spirit stone. He is the second son of Elhain, Dana Elhain. He was exceptional even among the Awakeners of the direct lineage of Alin. Not liking Jin's natural hair color, he changed it permanently and went to the imperial palace to serve as a guard for Princess Nina. He is informed that the spirit stones are where they always were, so he asks if he is so curious why he didn't run there as soon as he received a letter about the change in the spirit stone. He states that he is quite busy, but now he wants to see the spirit stone first. When he gets there, he finds it impressive and asks why they said it was just glowing, since if he had known it was so impressive, he would have come sooner. Then he is told that originally it wasn't like that. Quite surprised, he tries to touch it because even though the water awakeners of the Ojai family don't create water on their own, they can still manipulate it, a power called control. But now the waters that fill the place can't be controlled and are also becoming more violent. They are shocked, asking what is happening. At this moment, a light suddenly emanates and someone appears, questioning who they are. The boy asks who they are and where is the one who awakened him. They are shocked, wondering who this being is, and soon realize an immense pressure, realizing that humans can't reach this level of power. They know that only a monster or a divine being would be able to do this, so they ask who he is. But he replies that it is arrogant to ask that and uses his power of water to attack them. He controls them before declaring that he is Lord Rar's 10th weapon and also Jyrn's first contractor. They are shocked to realize who he is while the little boy continues and says that to them. He is known as the Spirit King. He asks if they are distant descendants of Jyrn since he has extraordinary strength. They tremble in pain as he mentions he will ask again who awakened him. Dan does not realize that if he does not answer, they will be killed, since he is treating them as beings smaller than ants. So they say that the child is outside and ask if they should go get him. The boy thinks for a moment and says not now, but in the next 3 days, they must bring the successor. And suddenly, Dan disappears in the note that apparently he went back to sleep. He knows that in 3 days, it would be the day after the end of the hunting competition and the banquet, and they decide to quickly report to their father. The Duke arrives, but the door can no longer be opened, so he calls them idiots and asks if none of them could have while the others were going to call him. But Dan does not ask if he knows what would happen to him if they were alone with the Spirit King, thinking that they would have been devoured. The eldest son tells him that the Spirit King told them to bring the heir of Jyrm and come back in 3 days. So if they come with R tomorrow, the door will definitely be open. But Ryan hasn't been seen lately, so they wonder where he is and what he's doing. Ryan has been particularly attached to R for the past few days. He says that he would also invite that child to the hunting competition. He wonders if he should stop her from coming, but the Duke says that if Ryan wants her to come, then they should respect that. It's more important than anything else. Hide the facts about the Spirit King, and they shouldn't let it get to the ears of the other children. In particular, the day of the hunting competition arrives. Then Michael appears but notices Ryan holding the king's hand. He stares at them, realizing that he doesn't like it. The Duke asks how he's feeling today. He says that he's feeling fine. He mentions that it's going to be a fun hunt, so the Duke tells him to enjoy it. He says that it's okay. While thinking that there's only one layer of the curse left, the curse in his eyes has almost been removed, and there's no problem seeing anything anymore. He also knows that the Duke thinks he can't see, which means he probably thinks he's just standing there like a scarecrow. Then he realizes that it's not hard to get what he wants. Now, his eyes fall back on Ray. Ryan holds her hands before noticing how that's another matter. After a while, she's sitting in a tree while thinking that these days, Ryan has been acting strange. Before he went back to the past, he never brought her to hunting competitions. How is it? And she never expected anything like this. But now, he said he'll take her to some games. He asks her what she wants. She tries to tell him that there was no need, but he asks because she doesn't want it. So she decides to ask for something, telling him not to kill the silver fox but just bring it to her. He was surprised before smiling and saying that he'll keep his promise. She knows that she mentioned the silver fox on purpose. Since it's hard to capture, it makes her wonder what he's planning before the regression. She's always wanted a situation like this, but now it's just annoying. Someone calls out to her. As she turns to find Michael, he calls out to her and sits down next to her. Then she asks how he knew she was there. He answers that he just thought she might be there and smiles as he looks at her, thinking that the truth is that he followed her refreshing scent on the wind. He smiles as she looks confused. She asks if there is anything wrong with his eyes, but he assures her that it is much better. He asks about her and touches her arms, thinking that it must have hurt a lot. She says that it did not hurt much since she is used to it. He asks her not to get used to it, making her look surprised as he continues and states that he does not want her to get used to feeling pain. His expression is full of surprise as she does not know what to say at a time like this. Then she asks why he came, making him admit that he missed her. She knows that other people consider her an unawakened person and do not even look at her, so she does not understand why he bothered to come to her. She notices that he also keeps asking about her. She says that she is happy that he also came, which leaves him shocked, and he starts to blush. Then he stands up and asks if she is going to the banquet that will be happening today. She remembers her brother telling her to go to the banquet after the hunting competition, but seems to hesitate. Suddenly, she tells him yes, if he goes. Then he confesses that he wanted to dance with her. She mentions that she doesn't know how to dance, but he tells her not to worry about it since he will teach her, confirming that there will be a banquet. Ryan is also wandering through the forest as he notices a silver fur before he is questioned by his brothers about why he wanted to capture a silver fox. But they decided that they should leave him alone, figuring that maybe he likes foxes. The Duke told him that he chose a difficult prey, so he asked the Duke about it. The Duke told him that it is a breed that was killed by their ancestors, so it is almost extinct now. He thinks that maybe this silver fox could be the last one left. He remembers her words when she told him to capture the silver fox, determined to capture it. He thinks that after this, maybe they can go back to how they were before. Suddenly, he notices something as he goes to check and realizes that it is the silver fox. He decides to get a little closer, trying to find it. But suddenly it is hit, and surely someone attacked, leaving him shocked and wondering who it could be. He realizes that the fox just fainted and wonders if it was the sound of a gunshot. He turns around to find someone, not understanding why he is there. It is Michael, who asks what is happening. He taunts Ryan, saying that apparently his hunting skills are inferior to his own, blinded by the curse. He approaches, telling Ryan that next time he should catch the fox faster. He passes by Ryan, stating that he is someone who asks to be robbed. Meanwhile, in her room, King realizes that she did not even open the dress that Ryan gave her for the banquet. She remembers that in her past life, she never wore a banquet dress and thinks about how so many things have changed since her regression. The visit of the imperial family and also the banquet. All these things did not happen before, so she wonders why the future has changed. She opens the box to see the dress and finds it beautiful, wondering if she would have liked it if she were an ordinary young woman. She looks in the mirror and thinks about her uncut hair with her old gray dress and the young face of TRS years ago. She knows she looks ridiculous, but if it were before, she would not have any more regrets in her life. But now, she will write. The night after the hunting competition, a girl comes out of the carriage and calls out to the young Master Ran, saying that it has been a long time. He greets Princess Nina and also thanks the Crown Prince for visiting her at the banquet. She continues to cling to him. The others notice the princess, realizing that she did not even greet them and went straight to him. The princess tells Dana that that behavior does not suit him, while he seems irritated and says that he knows that. The eldest son, Enraz, thanks him for the visit and says that he received his gift last time. The prince also asks about the hunting competition from earlier, so Enraz says that it ended well. The crown prince notices. By the expressions, something is wrong and he wonders what happened. Then he looks around, realizing that he does not see Michael. He notices him standing in the corner and thinks that the curse seems to be working well. The princess asks the crown prince what he is thinking, and he replies that he was thinking that the young master is too good to marry her. Then she gets embarrassed and asks him to be quiet. She tells the prince that Ryan seems a little upset today and remembers how she asked if the king was not coming. And since he didn't seem happy, she tells her brother that she looks like him, so she wanted to get closer to her. But the prince knows that's why the duke hates her even more. Although she looks like the person he values most among the heirs, she is the most incompetent. He notices how innocent Nina is and apparently doesn't know that the king is despised. Suddenly, everyone is shocked and turns to the entrance, where he quickly notices them looking at the stairs when the king finally comes down. Everyone is shocked to see her, including the duke, and he notices that she looks like her mother. She apologizes for being late, and the princess also notices that she is so different from before that he didn't recognize her. It's the first time he has seen her in a dress like that, and they also notice her elegant and composed behavior, without any fear, really looking like a perfect lady. Ryan observes her and knows that even after being mistreated, she always sought the affection of the family, which makes him even more disappointed since it is ridiculous for her to expect to be able to enter the middle of the family. So he always asked her not to follow him. He approaches her while she stares at him and asks her why she is looking at him with such cold eyes. He holds out his hands to her and asks for a dance before being interrupted by Michael, who asks if she would like to dance with him. He remembers Michael's words from earlier when he said that he should make sure to take her faster next time since he might lose to him again. He is furious, while the king is surprised but then says that he would love to dance with him with all his heart. Ryan stands there looking at him walking away as the music plays. She asks Michael if he likes this song. He says that maybe he did in the past and points out that she looks very beautiful today, which she thanks him for, saying that he looks impeccable too. Her attention turns to the crown prince, who is looking at them. She knows that before regressing, the royal family even dabbled in ancient powers and potions. She remembers how the assassins entered the Feast of Elin, and how Michael, who lost his sight thanks to a curse beyond magic, turned to dust. She realizes that all these ancient powers cannot be used unless the person is of the royal family. Then she wonders if this means that the royal family is behind it. She begins to wonder if the royal visit is to ensure that Michael's curse is intact. She asks if it is appropriate for Michael to dance publicly like this and says that whoever cursed his eyes is at the banquet, but he just smiles. She notices that she was thinking about explaining and expected him to get tenser, but apparently he already understood. Michael explains that he doesn't care, surprised that she thought he hadn't. So he changes the subject, saying that more importantly, when she comes of age, she should go and have sex with him and expects her to accompany him. Meanwhile, Ryan is watching them, clenching his fist and thinking that she should never leave Ryan. And when he takes over as Duke on the day he comes of age, he can keep her tied to him forever. The ball continues, and Nina begins to feel her feet hurt. So she asks Ryan to stop and rest, suggesting that they go inside for a while. Nina notes the Duke talking to the prince and imagines that they must be discussing their marriage. The prince drinks a glass of wine and asks if he should send the marriage documents in the traditional way. The Duke thinks yes, asking him to please do it when Ryan suddenly refuses. The prince looks confused while the Duke wonders what he is doing. Ryan explains that he has something to say first. The Duke gets nervous while Nina looks at him confused and wonders what is happening. Her father tries to speak, but Ryan continues and suddenly declares that their marriage should happen after their coming-of-age ceremony. The prince looks to the side, then smiles and says he understands since marriages during minority are usually troubled. The prince declares that the Duke's eldest son is a serious and cautious person, while the Duke explains that he cares a lot for Nina. Then Nina approaches and catches his eye, before smiling and thanking him for thinking so much of her. But Ryan continues with a cold expression, knowing that it was not because of her, but decides that it is not bad to let her believe he did it to make sure that his coming-of-age ceremony happens quickly. Since the family laughs at him, led by the water alarms, currently he is the strongest, so he will take over the duchy as soon as he comes of age, and so he will not let the king escape. The next day in the mansion, the king is thinking, as it's been a while, and she looks at the piano, remembering how she used to be disciplined by the Duke. She remembers when she was a child and still feels how he used to beat her. Suddenly, the Duke appears, and he seems in a bad mood as he points out how she danced with Michael last night. She turns around as he asks if she has any excuse for that, so she decides to ask if she needs any excuse and boldly asks if it was okay to dance with Michael. The Duke is amazed, and he can't believe that the scared little girl from before has changed so much. He wonders why, but thinks that even if she says that, it's probably just a new way to get attention. So he starts yelling, asking if she thinks she can rebel because she's somehow close to the Duke, and making it clear that this attitude is not going to get his attention. He warns her that she's not the maid, and he has no intention of treating her like his daughter. Ray thinks before speaking, so she declares that it's okay since she doesn't consider him her father either. The Duke is shocked, thinking that this isn't something she would say, but Ray thinks about how she wanted to be part of the family more than anyone, but in the end, Her crying never helped. The Duke asks if she has any idea what she's talking about now, but she confirms that she does, since as he himself mentioned, she's not one, so it's contradictory to ask her to stay away from Michael since she has no obligation to do her duties. The Duke doesn't know what to answer, so he asks her if she remembers what this room is for. The king remembers that whenever she went to the discipline room, she heard what it was for, so there's no way she didn't know. In the past, this was the Duchess's music room, the place she loved most before she died. But when she died, the Duke started to blame her, thinking that she shouldn't have been born. The Duchess was already weak after giving birth to 3 children, but she endured until the end, until she gave birth to Ryan, the king, when she finally took her last breath. But now she asks if her mother's wish was for him to take revenge by blaming his own children. Then she passes by the Duke, still shocked, and tells him that if he has nothing more to say, she's going to leave. The Duke stays in the room alone, and then he remembers his wife's last moments and how happy she was to give birth to such a beautiful daughter. But he keeps thinking that the blame for her death is on the king, someone who didn't even inherit his power. So she can never be an heir and declares that she can never be a disgrace. At night, the king is with Michael, and she tells him that she will remove the last layer of the curse. She finishes. He thanks her but notices how tired she is and asks if something happened. She explains that she was in the discipline room for a while. Michael realizes what she is saying. He notices how she has no bruises and realizes that, fortunately, she did not suffer any physical violence. He smiles, knowing that if he asks about the details, she will probably feel uncomfortable, but asks her to lean on him if she is very tired. He looks at her silently. Then he wonders if she is ignoring him again. But suddenly, she approaches and really clings to him, making Michael turn completely red. Then she confesses what happened, explaining that she finally told the Duke that she does not consider him her family. She is nervous and wonders if this was the right decision. Michael does not believe that the king is opening up to him for the first time. He decides what to do, then begins to compliment her, explaining that she doesn't need to try hard to impress someone who doesn't respect her. So he decides to ask what Alin did to her. She seems confused, but Michael holds her hand and assures her that he can hear her. She admits that she doesn't know where to start and remembers a distant memory. She remembers that when she woke up, she was very young and was in front of a cabin in the mountains. They made sure to leave enough food, but it was clear that the Duke's wish was for her to be alone. They probably wanted to keep her alive but hide her from everyone. Michael hears that one day they finally came back, but it was only to use her as a tool and improve her skills, and if it weren't for that, they probably would have kept her in the mountains forever. But then she starts to thinking that maybe it would have been better to live alone in the mountains. She confesses that it was very difficult to live, remembering all the fights without reason and all the punishments she suffered. But she continues and remembers how she always kept trying since she was always a child who wanted to be loved by her family, so she didn't mind being used if they saw her as part of the family. Then she becomes sad and explains that now she no longer cares about the royal family or the nobility. Michael calls for her, then hugs her. Suddenly, she looks confused, but he starts talking, declaring that he will definitely make her escape from Alin. She is surprised but soon closes her eyes and accepts before hugging her and thanking her for her help. He asks what she wants to do after leaving there, but this takes her by surprise. Suddenly, Ray smiles and confesses that she has always wanted to see the sea, wanting to do that at least once before she dies. But he seems surprised and blushes while asking if by chance she is wronged for wanting only that. Then he smiles, declaring that in the name of the Vers family, he will rescue her in her coming-of-age ceremony, and then they will be able to see the sea. Meanwhile, the day to see the spirit finally arrives, and the Duke takes Ryan to the door of the room. The Duke asks Henraz to open the door, and soon the 4 enter the room. The Duke seems nervous, thinking about when he first heard that the spirit had awakened, and now he knows that he had no idea how powerful he really was. Seeing the spirit lying peacefully in a whirlpool of water, he feels the pressure and knows that it really is him. Inria kneels down and declares that he has brought the bearer of the spiritual stone, just as he wanted. Suddenly, the spirit wakes up, and Ryan introduces himself to the spirit, but he is confused, asking if that was why he woke him up. The Duke wonders what he is saying, and suddenly he attacks the room with his pressure. He looks furious while everyone is terrified. The spirit says that what they are saying does not make sense, declaring that Ryan is false, which leaves him astonished. It is raining heavily outside the mansion, and the spirit explains that it was not him who woke him up. Rhea does not understand what he is talking about, but the spirit asks irritably how dare they bring a lie and try to deceive him like that. So he declares that he will kill them all. For this, the Duke tries to explain that they do not know what he is talking about and is sure that Ryan is the bearer of the stone. The spirit wonders how someone can be so foolish, feeling that it was the reincarnation of Juram who woke him up, so she must be there somewhere. He warns that the true bearer of the stone is in the mansion, ordering them to bring this person to him. The Duke falls to his knees, confused but has no choice but to obey, completely terrified and without knowing who he is talking about. But for today, we will leave it here. You watch the whole thing every second, and yet here we are. I gave you my time, my energy, my heart, and you just took it. No like, no subscribe, nothing. Maybe I expected too much. Right now, just one click, one moment, and we can start over. Go ahead, I'll wait. So if you liked this story and want a continuation, let me know in the comments by writing Spirit Stone.